Welcome to Enhancing the Human. I'm Dr. Jena Gatses, a renowned expert in the field of human enhancement. I've spent decades of my life exploring all aspects of human health, which has allowed me to take people from extreme injury and disability to peak athletic performance. I use cutting-edge advancements, breakthrough technologies, and scientific insights to push the boundaries of human capabilities. The human body is able to do so much more than you think. Let's start enhancing the human. Hello and welcome to Enhancing the Human podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jena Gatses, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Tom Loeffler. He is the head of 360 Boxing Promotions, which hosts UFC Fight Pass and Hollywood Fight Nights. His promotional company is responsible for some of the top fighters in the entire world. His stories are amazing and unique, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear what he has to say. Let's get to it. First of all, thank you for being here. I love this because I'm also interested in everything I'm asking people. So I want to know how you got into this. So you do boxing promotion. Most people don't know what that is. If you can explain a little bit about what that entails and just what you're involved in.
Oh, it's great to be here. It's great to be able to share some of the stories with you and talk about some of the things that I do. So I appreciate the invitation. I've been involved in boxing for over 30 years now. Starting out as a manager in boxing. Actually, I got into boxing. That's an interesting story. The way I got into boxing is a good friend of mine from high school. He was representing a lot of retired athletes, really famous retired athletes on the sports memorabilia side. Sandy Koufax, Joe Namath, Jim Brown, Kareem, all the big heroes.
Great.
And the biggest name, Muhammad Ali. So I became partners with him on the financial side. And because we were doing a lot of work with Ali, we had a lot of boxers contact us. So the first fighter we signed was Kevin Kelly from Flushing, Queens, New York, who we developed as, he was rated number one, but he wasn't a champion. So we got him his world title fight on HBO, and he became the first champion that I ever worked with, WBC featherweight champion. And ever since then, the boxing bug bit me, and I got caught up into it. Then I started managing 10 different fighters, including Shane Mosley. I got him his world title fight on HBO as well. And then I was representing Ed Mahone from Foreign Boxing, heavyweight. In 1999, I remember, in Oberhausen, Germany, I got him his world title fight against Vitaly Klitschko. So Ed proceeds to get knocked out in the third round. But Vitaly's manager at the time was friends with me and told Vitaly that I represent Ali, and that's naturally him and Vladimir's hero in boxing, as I'd say 99% of the boxers out there. So I invited Vitaly. I always try to keep a good relationship, whether they're an opponent, a friend, whatever. I always try to keep good relationships because you never know. Boxing is like a circular world. Sometimes you have the champion, you're on top, and other times you have the challenger, and you're trying to, get back on top. So I invited Vitaly to LA. He came out, to meet Muhammad whenever it worked for his schedule, from when Muhammad would be in town. And about 6 months later, he came to LA. Actually, his first son was born here at Cedar Sinai. So when he was here, invited to come to the office, he met with Muhammad, and ever since then, we had struck up a good personal friendship. And we were meeting when he was here. He was here for about 3 months after his son was born. And during that time, we really developed a good relationship, and that's how I got into promoting fights, is through the Klitschko brothers. The very first promotion, sometimes, promoters start like club shows, smaller shows, and they work their way up. And so my first boxing promotion was at the Staples Center, which was very new at the time. So Vitaly fought Lennox Lewis in 2003. And we did our first promotion under K2 Promotions in 2004. Lennox had vacated the title. He didn't want the rematch with Vitaly. If you remember that fight, that's when Vitaly had the big cut in his eye, and he walked in. That Lennox Lewis fight was very interesting, probably the most exciting heavyweight fight I've seen, where Vitaly walked in as the challenger, and 80% of the people at Staples Center were cheering for Lennox Lewis as the champion because they knew who Lennox was, and they didn't really know much about Vitaly over here in the United States. The way Vitaly fought, and he was winning the fight, the judges had it all scored 4-2 going into the 6th round, or going in the 7th round, actually. And Doctor stopped the fight, unfortunately, on cuts, which was a little bit questionable because if you're winning the fight, it's a heavyweight championship of the world. It was bad cuts, but the cut man always had control of it during the break, which, it's kind of debatable one way or the other. But because he wanted to keep fighting and he jumped up on the ropes and blood was streaming down him, the fans changed from 80% for Lennox Lewis to 80% for Vitaly, cheering him, thinking, he should have been able to continue. And I think it would have gone one more round, and he had Lennox exhausted. But either way, the first fight that we promoted was the next year when Lennox vacated the title. Vitaly fought for the vacant WBC Heavyweight Championship of the World at Staples Center on HBO, and that was my first promotion.
Starting it big. That's amazing.
I didn't get any sleep probably for 2 months leading up to that promotion.
Doesn't matter though.
Because
just
now,
keep going.
Now you got everything in place. You have a lot of key people in place: the publicist, the matchmaker, operations manager, medical director. But I was doing a lot of stuff. If you can believe that, it was really surreal when I can tell you that when I saw Fight Night and I saw the people filling up at Staples Center and Vitaly winning the title, it was just we went on from there. It was very successful. HBO was happy. The California Commission was happy. WBC was happy.
You were happy.
German TV was happy. So it was a big success for us, and I wound up promoting every one of the Klitschko fights since 2004. So we actually hold the record. K2 Promotions holds the record as having promoted the most heavyweight championship fights of this century. So I'm really proud of that fact. And K2 Ukraine has Alexander Usyk, who was an Olympic gold medalist in 2000, I believe it was 2016. And they're continuing on now that K2 tradition because he's defending his title now against Tyson Fury coming up here in 2 weeks.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What a story.
So that's kind of a brief synopsis of how I got into the promotion business. Under K2, like I said, we promoted all of Vitaly's and Vladimir's fights. Every time I talk about them, you got to send our thoughts and prayers to the people of Ukraine. Vitaly's the mayor of Kiev right now, so he was in some big fights in the ring, but this is like the fight of his life, fight of their life and their
Right.
survival over there in Ukraine. So I saw Vladimir about 2 months ago in Washington, D.C. when he was lobbying for the people of Ukraine. And, they're, both sides are losing a lot of people. And
He went and he's trying to fight for Ukraine, correct? Yeah, that's...
Well, he's lobbying for Ukraine. I would say Vladimir is probably the best ambassador they can have. His English is perfect. He has very compelling arguments and stories. He was on the front line with Vitaly. They have a lot of close friends in the military, which really affects them because they've seen a lot of their friends, get killed in the war. And a lot of athletes, in fact, have passed away during that war, really on both sides. But Vladimir, they're very in touch with the military leaders, and Vitaly grew up in a military family. I was actually, that's an interesting story. When I was working with them, I was the first American when the Soviet Union came down and Ukraine was an independent country, which are trying to keep their independence now. I was the very first American on one of their military training bases. It's called the Polygon, right outside of Kiev. Right. And so if you can imagine, it was kind of like, not a secret training area, but it was definitely off limits to any civilians. And they brought me onto the base, and you can imagine they had every weapon there to shoot, and that was a pretty cool experience. Being with both those guys really has opened up a lot of doors for me in promoting events all throughout Europe in soccer stadiums, from the biggest stadiums in Germany to. We did the first one in Poland, first event in one of the brand new soccer stadiums that they built for the World Cup over there in Poland, and then we promoted in Switzerland. Naturally, the big fight Vladimir had at the O2 Arena with 90,000 people against Anthony Joshua. But with those guys, that opened up a lot of doors for me on the promotional side, internationally promoting. A lot of promoters are successful in one, region.
Right.
But with the Klitschko's fighting all over the place, that opened the doors. Then we signed Triple G, who wasn't known at all here in the United States. I begged, I begged to get him on any type of U.S. TV I could, whether it's HBO, Showtime. There was a channel platform, Epix at the time, was showing boxing, and none of them really knew what to do with a guy from Kazakhstan who kind of spoke English wasn't very good at the time.
He still doesn't like to talk.
My pitch for Triple G was he's a world champion. He'll fight anybody, literally anybody, in the middleweight division for a title defense. Doesn't need a lot of money. Just wants the opportunity to present his skills on American TV. And I remember the meeting was in January, and a lot of the people didn't even know where Kazakhstan was. Their reference to Kazakhstan was Borat, which that's a whole different story. But Triple G definitely put Kazakhstan on the map for a lot of U.S. people that now they realized where Kazakhstan was, and he became a phenomenon. It was in September. There was a lot of machinations there too, because that was my pitch. He'll fight anyone. He's a world champion, middleweight champion, good-looking guy. Just put him on against anyone you want, and he just wants the opportunity. So Showtime, it looked like they were going to give him an opportunity, but then that didn't work out, and then HBO was working on it, but that had fallen through. And then they were going to do a unification fight, and one of the guys pulled out to fight the champion in Germany, Felix Sturm, and that opened up the door then for Triple G to fight the champion that nobody wanted to fight. Pirog was his name. He knocked out Danny Jacobs in 2 rounds. Big puncher. And so I said, Triple G will fight him, no problem at all. So what winds up happening is then Pirog gets injured, and the promoter at the time wanted to put in, he reduced the money. He put in, instead of a right-handed boxer, a southpaw boxer, right-handed puncher, he put in a southpaw boxer, completely different style. And I just said yes to everything. I said, doesn't matter. He's going to fight. He's going to fight. He's going to fight. And sure enough, it came around in September 2012, and he made his HBO debut, his American debut here, and he took apart the European champion. Proxa was the guy's name, and he dismantled him. I think it was in 5 rounds, and it was so impressive that the HBO fans said, when are we going to see Triple G again? HBO said they've never had such a reaction to a debuting guy in the United States, first fight in the United States. And then we did Gabe Rosado at Madison Square Garden in January, then Curtis Stevens at Madison Square Garden in the small arena at the theater there at the Garden. And by the time he fought Curtis Stevens, every time it was funny with Triple G. Like, nobody wanted to believe how good he was. Abel Sanchez told me from the beginning, he's really the hardest guy I've ever felt on the pads. And he had some great fighters, Terry Norris, Orlin Norris, so many other champions that he had, Lupe Aquino. And when he said that, that's all I need to hear. If a guy like Abel Sanchez, who's had 22 champions, or Freddie Roach, who's had like 40-something champions, when they say this guy is that good, I don't need to. I don't need to see much more of that.
No.
So
and he has some heart.
Yeah.
He's such a good person, and he's so encouraging. But his heart, because you can't teach that. You can have all the skill in the world, but if you don't have heart, that's an added bonus.
Yeah. Then that goes to that goes to kind of what your premise was, is like, who were the fighters or the people I like to surround myself with in boxing? Because of the success we've had, we get a lot of people approaching us, and to me, it's just as important the character and the type of person you are outside the ring, whether it's your loyalty or just your values or just the way you market yourself, as the talent in the ring. Naturally, you need to be talented in the ring.
Yes.
And that's what Triple G was, talented in the ring, but he allowed me to open the doors on the promotional side. Every time I suggested, let's go do this. Let's go to Dodger Stadium, throw out the first pitch. Let's go to the hockey game, the Kings game, and make an appearance there. Let's fly down to Mexico City and do some charity events there. He had built up a huge Mexican fan base. A guy from Kazakhstan who didn't speak, he actually learned a few words from Abel Sanchez in Spanish, but like I said, his English was limited. And to have fans, when I can say it was like a universally idolized boxer or athlete, I shouldn't even say boxer, he transcended boxing to just an athlete and ambassador for sports. That was the guy. He was knocking guys out in the ring. I was opening the doors on the promotional side. We got some great sponsorships for him. The Jordan brand, he was only the third boxer, I should say, not athlete, third boxer that the Jordan brand ever officially signed, which was a huge deal. It was Roy Jones was the first one, Andre Ward was the second one, both great American boxers and Olympians. Triple G from Kazakhstan was also an Olympian, but totally different, totally different background, demographic, everything. But Jordan saw the value of that, and because of that sponsorship, the Jordan brand, which is huge globally anyway, but it became that was like the thing. If Triple G was wearing Jordan, everyone in Kazakhstan wanted to wear Jordan. Then Tecate wanted to sponsor him. Chivas Regal sponsored him. Hublot watches sponsored him. So it was really cool. And also Bijan over here on Rodeo Drive. Very exclusive men's clothier. And they'd never sponsor anyone. There's presidents in there, pictures of different people, ambassadors, heads of state, whatever it is, kings. And they actually sponsored Triple G because there was a personal connection with Nicholas Bijan, and so that was great. He had to be the best dressed boxer at any of the press conference is Triple G. So that's a whole different offshoot of what I was doing with the Klitschko's. Then we developed Triple G into a global star, and it kind of took the same path. I was really inspired by Muhammad Ali because Ali was really, you could argue, he was the definition of a people's champion. He was a world champion, but anywhere he went, whether it was Zaire when he fought George Foreman and the people in Africa were chanting Ali Boumbaye, or he was in Japan fighting Inoki over there. That was kind of like that weird wrestling, boxing type of thing, or the Philippines when he fought Joe Frazier. Wherever he went, the people were cheering for him. And that's what I wanted to develop with Triple G, because I wanted him to really bring back the definition of being a world champion, with the experience of promoting the Klitschko's all throughout Europe, in Madison Square Garden, at Staples Center, in Las Vegas. I took Triple G to a lot of those places, and wherever he went, when he sold out the O2 Arena in London, fought Kell Brook over there in London, or the Saitama Arena, sold that out in Tokyo when he fought Murata. That was his most recent unification fight. Wherever he went, he would sell out. He wound up selling out Madison Square Garden, which is still my favorite arena to promote at to this day, and probably the hardest arena to sell out. And when he sold that out, it was him versus David Lemieux from Canada, his first unification fight. Champion from Kazakhstan, a champion from Canada, no local champions like Felix Trinidad or Miguel Cotto or any local fighters like that, and that combination sold out the Garden, and that was a great experience. We actually broke the record at the StubHub Arena. If you remember StubHub, that's like dubbed the war grounds for boxing here at Carson. And his very first fight in LA, he was training in Big Bear with Abel Sanchez. But because of the attention he was getting in New York and the support we were getting from the Garden, he had been fighting on the East Coast. So his very first fight here, I didn't know, how he would be received. Mostly Hispanic fans here in California, especially Southern California. Abel Sanchez, naturally, born in Mexico, speaks fluent Spanish. But it wound up cleanly selling out 3 weeks before the fight. I've never had an event like that before. Sold every ticket 3 weeks before the event, and then we added another 2,000 seats. So we took a 7,000 seat venue to a 9,000 seat venue. They still use that event that we promoted with Triple G. It was Triple G versus Marco Antonio Rubio. so many different names and opponents
No,
and
I love
everything
it
like
though.
that. I
I
have
love
to
it though.
think
Especially
back to the Rolodex.
I've worked with the G family for a while they were out here, so
Nice.
I know him personally. So I love this.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I like the specifics. It's interesting. So
Yeah.
keep going.
So we built bleachers. So we added.
I was gonna say, how did you
2,000
add
seats.
seats?
Yeah,
You built
it's
bleachers.
an outdoor venue, and we built bleachers. It's really a tennis stadium, so it's a great venue, naturally a great venue for boxing. Every different angle. Put the boxing ring in the middle, right in the middle of the tennis court. Naturally, you have the floor seats, and then we built bleachers up where the concourse is, where they have the suites on the top, and those sold out. Every time we released more tickets, I remember we were releasing because we had some on hold for the promoter hold. Every time we released 100 tickets, they would literally be gone in a couple hours, and that really was a breakthrough between him selling out Madison Square Garden and breaking the sales record there at StubHub. I knew, okay, he's broken through the mainstream. He's really, even with limited English, but he's got a great smile, had a great style in the ring, always very respectful.
Yes.
In fact, pretty soon I'm gonna write a Triple G appreciation post about all the things he accomplished, all the things he did right, as someone that the young kids could look up to, also as an ambassador for the sport of boxing. And that's what happened. He was knocking guys out in the ring. Abel was training him, doing helping with a lot of the promotional stuff, especially with the Spanish TV networks, the Mexican fans, everything like that. And I opened up a lot of doors for him on the promotional side, and that was about as well oiled as a machine as I have experienced, where everyone was on the same page. As long as Gennady was successful, everyone on the team was successful, and that's what happened. You could tell everyone really liked to be involved in that team.
But I feel that's what you get when you have people with heart and people that have character and integrity. They bring something out of you. So we were at Wildcard Boxing, and we were doing box jumps, and all the guys were watching me do box jumps because I'm pretty powerful when I work out on a regular.
Doing the high ones.
Yeah, so I was doing the high ones, and then G comes over and he's like, Jena, he calls me, and so then he does it with one leg, 36 inches, and I'm like, I was so proud of myself for doing the 36 inches just by itself. So then I tried to do it because it just made me mad, and everyone was watching because I train all these guys, and so I'm like, all right, moment of truth, and he's calling me out, and he could see, and he looks at me and he goes, Jena, believe. That's all he said. He just said believe, and I did it.
Nice.
And I did it on my left leg, so I was hoisting my other side up and then landing with my left, and then he goes, now the other side. I'm like, come on, give me a second. But his heart, his integrity, how much he loved his family, he's such a good person, such a good person, inside and out. And I feel like that connection. And it's funny because I didn't necessarily know that you were all about that, but I knew you guys were good guys because I've seen you, now for years, and we've talked for a long time now, and I feel like there's people you connect with because you can feel their heart is similar, and their character, because it's a weird world, especially with
absolutely.
with what you do too.
He was, that's a good example because he actually, when they were heavyweights, when Abel was training heavyweights up there in Big Bear, and there was one of the guys that wanted to, somehow they figured, okay, they would wrestle with G up there, and he was so strong, physically so strong as a core. It kind of goes to what you were saying as far as his legs. He wasn't like a bodybuilder type of guy with all these defined muscles. He was just so fit and powerful. And he wound up pinning the heavyweight, who outweighed him by at least 50 pounds, more than 50 pounds, probably 70 pounds. And one time we bought a cruiserweight up there, world-class cruiserweight, Ola Afalabi, and Gennady said, okay, I'll just hit you in the body. It won't hit your head, whatever. Just they were doing sparring. And the next day, I was like, I can't even move my arms. He was just hitting him on the shoulders. So, he was so strong. And that goes to, when you said, how do I determine, which guys do I work with? When Abel said, this guy punches the hardest I've ever seen or I've ever felt. And then naturally, okay, that's one big criteria. Secondly is, okay, get to know them, get to know their family, get to know what they stand for, their values, that type of thing. And because it's hard to pitch an athlete like that as an ambassador for the sport of boxing or as a representative of a brand. When you have a global brand like Jordan or something like that,
Right.
they're if they do something stupid outside the ring, it's like it kills everyone's integrity or it kills everyone's reputation. So you don't want to, kind of jeopardize that if you're not working with the right type of people.
Right.
So yeah, it really that's really where I became better known here in the United States, because the Klitschko's fought so often in Europe that I wish they would have fought more over here. But there was a little bit of a power struggle there where the German guys over there wanted them to fight over there on German TV. I thought they should at least fight once over here on HBO, just keep their legacy over here. But because Gennady fought over here so often, that's really where my reputation as a promoter was kind of ingrained, was the success that we had with the ticket sales, with the pay-per-view, with just trying to unify the titles, making so many different titles. He has the record, tied the record with Bernard Hopkins as the most middleweight championship title defenses at one time. And at one point, he had 23 knockouts in a row. So to have 23 knockouts in a row against world-class guys, that's not easy to do.
No.
You have guys that are out there, they're undefeated, they have a lot of knockouts, but they're fighting guys who are like way below them. Right. And what Gennady achieved in that limited amount of time, a lot of people don't realize. I didn't start working with him until he was 30 years old. He actually, coincidentally, had the same promoter that the Klitschko's had in Germany that they were unhappy with, that promoter. And so when that contract was up and they left him, that's when I started K2 Promotions to start working with the Klitschko's. And Gennady got out of his contract also with that same promoter. But by the time he turned pro at 26, and then he had kind of spent 4 years in Germany, not really making much progress in his career. That's why he wanted to come to America, get the exposure on American TV. And he was 30 years old already. So the time was, by the first time when he fought on HBO, the clock was ticking where, when you're establishing someone, then he was 31, 32, 33, and a lot of boxers already retired by the time they're 33, 34 years old.
I was going to ask you that for the audience. What's a normal retirement age and what's a normal,
mid-30s? Mid-30s
age?
For sure, but the peak is your mid-20s. I mean, a lot of fighters, you see them turning pro now at 20. Callum Walsh turned pro when he was 21. Mm-hmm. He's 23 now. So, from your early 20s. So right. If you can imagine, so Callum now is 23, and he's already headlined the MSG Theater twice with only 10 fights. So if I had that kind of runway with Triple G, right, it would have been a whole different story. A lot of people were, like I said, the clock was ticking. So in order to get that Canelo fight, or the Canelo fights, Canelo really wasn't on the Triple G radar from the beginning, because Canelo was always fighting at 154. So he wasn't trying to call out the smaller guys. I mean, he always said, like, if Floyd wanted to come up to 160 and fight, then he would fight him because he wanted to fight the best. But, and then when Canelo won that middleweight title, all of a sudden it was like, okay, now we got to fight Canelo because he's the biggest name, he's a champion, and they pretty much came on a collision course. And that was something where Canelo has a huge fan base. Triple G by that time had built up a huge fan base, and when you put those two big fan bases together, that was another proud moment that I had, where that very first Triple G Canelo fight in 2017, we did the third highest gate in Nevada history of boxing. That includes all the Tyson fights, all the Mayweather fights. It was like $27 million for that fight, so that was huge. Did good pay-per-view, did over 1 million pay-per-view buys. So that was a great accomplishment that we had on the Triple G side. But again, by the time Canelo fought him, he was already 36 years old.
That's
so
crazy.
That like I said, that's already past your prime in boxing. Right. But most people peak, I would say, from 25 to 35. That's really your prime, and then after that. But a lot of people retire. If they go through a lot of wars from like 20 to 30, a lot of people, you see them retiring at 30, 31, 32, just because boxing is such an intense sport, and you have to be, your reflexes, as soon as you lose a little bit of your reflexes in boxing, you can see the decline comes very quickly there. The power, they always say the power is the kind of last thing to go, and luckily Triple G had a lot of power. But that's why George Foreman also, I think, was successful as the oldest heavyweight champion, because he still had that power when he knocked out Michael Moore. Right. So yeah, that's the Triple G stories were there's many many Triple G stories. One of my favorites is he fought in Monaco 3 times, and a lot of people didn't like Monaco. It's only like a 900 seat arena over there, but it was like in the palace. There was like one sporting hall, and then there was another set up in the palace there, and like Prince Albert would come to watch the fights. He'd be at ringside. Princess Charlene would be there. I became very good friends with Princess Charlene's father, Mike Woodstock, from South Africa, from Johannesburg, and he was always there, involved in the boxing events over there. So when Triple G fought there 3 times, he became a local hero in Monaco, you know, and then he got invited for the Formula One race. A lot of athletes go, and you always see them posting photos about where they're located or where they're watching it or whatever. But Triple G, we were invited to be in the penthouse suite of Prince Albert, and watching it with him. And then he would have to go down to start the race, and then he would come back up, and then at the end of the race, he would go down and present the winners with the awards. So that was like an incredible experience, watching that Formula One in Monaco with Prince Albert.
Unbelievable.
That was pretty impressive. Yeah, that was cool.
Everything you've said so far is pretty impressive and pretty unbelievable. But I love that.
I got a bunch of stories.
No,
it just takes me a while to
and
think
it's,
of them.
But in it too, just coming from, and we talk about this all the time, the more we care and like show how much we care about people's character, like, 'cause that integrity is everything to me. I'm 100% Greek. My family's all about character, your word. And
Mykonos is one of my favorite places in
love
the world.
it. And there's some loyal people out there.
Yeah.
Italy too, it's like the European way is very, you know, family oriented and just based on character and integrity. So, but the more we care about and talk to people like that, the more are attracted to us. So I feel like I'm gathering all these great people that are doing amazing things in the world. So,
Absolutely.
and I love to hear that about you. I didn't know all of that. You know, I knew it for so long. He loved my little brother, so he would hang out with my little brother and they would play ping pong together.
Oh, he was a good ping pong player too.
He's unbelievable. And like, if you can't get mad because he's such a disciplined person.
Really good at ping
pong. He'd like shoot you one, you know, he'd be like, well, like, come to my country. But like, basically like, we'll punch you in the face. Like, you can't talk like that where I come from because, you know, you'll get punched in the face. But he was such a good person. He would always ask what we wanted, you know, making sure that, you know, he's hospitable. So it makes me happy to hear all those things about him because he deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the theme with Triple G, it wasn't about money. It was about he wanted to show that he was the best. Right. And that was my pitch, like I said, to HBO. A lot of people shoot themselves in the foot where they're already negotiating the money before they even get in the door to be on the, you know, to get the opportunity. And here is just that we want the opportunity. He wants to fight the best. He wants to prove that he's the best because that's the only way that he can be considered the best if he fights the best, the guys. And boy, I'll tell you, a fighter being avoided. When I tell you the stories there, Jena, it just, I mean, people came up with so many different excuses of why they couldn't fight Triple G. And I would always relay the information to HBO. And they said that, well, we have a new motto for Triple G. It's like, yeah, we'll fight Triple G, just not next. It was always like, yeah, we'll fight him, but no, not in the next fight. Let's wait a little bit.
Because as a fighter, wouldn't you want to take the opportunities given to you? Like, how many opportunities are going to come?
It was bizarre. I've worked with a lot of world champions, and when you have a world champion like Kevin Kelly, like a Shane Mosley, like the Klitschko brothers, it's like everyone wanted to fight for the opportunity to fight for the world title. And if you fight for a world title, you get a big payday. And we were offering guys career high paydays to fight Triple G. There was a lot of times when we had to pay the challenger the same amount as Triple G just to get someone of name recognition in the ring with them. And HBO, they, like I said, they were privy to all the conversations because I didn't want to, you know, say, well, this guy turned down the fight, this guy turned down the fight. It's like, you know, they really turned down the fight. And so at first it was like, okay, we need to get these opponents in there to fight Triple G. And then when they realized, okay, the top names at the time just didn't want to fight him, and they were like literally negotiating like it'd be their last fight. I'm like, you know, if it was literally like negotiating like it's a retirement fight. This is the last time they're going to be in the ring. It was so bizarre. I've never experienced that before. And he had.
Such a good guy, such a well-mannered person. Where like he'd be like proper sitting there, you know, like it's not.
He'd be smiling,
yeah,
you know.
He's so happy, but you could tell he could murder.
And he had multiple world titles. It wasn't just like one world title, and he's just starting out. It was literally like 3 world titles, career high paydays. the whole thing with the O2 Arena. We started with Billy Joe Saunders, who was like the last title that he didn't have. Ironically enough, because that would have been that first one. If Pirog didn't get injured, he would have gotten that WBO title. But that one, somehow Billy Joe Saunders wound up with it, and then just the economics never worked for them. And then it's like, okay, we're going to come to the O2. You can have this much money. It would have been Billy Joe's biggest payday at the time. That didn't happen. Then it was going to be Chris Eubanks. It was going and going. It looked like it was going to be signed. Somehow that didn't work out. And it got to the point we were negotiating for like 6 weeks, and that didn't work out. And then that's when we wound up with Kell Brook. And a lot of people like kind of criticized, well, Kell Brook was a welterweight. He was moving up from welterweight to challenge middleweight. Yeah, but we just offered the two best middleweights in the UK the fight, and they both turned it down. So you can't criticize the guys like, who else are we going to put in the ring? And that was the HBO, to their credit, said, okay, if we can't get the guys to fight him, Triple G is going to be the middle of the spoke. I remember having this conversation with Mark Taffet, who was the head of the pay-per-view division over there at HBO. He's like, Tom, if we can't get the guys to fight him, I don't have to put the names out there, but people can figure whoever was the champion at that time didn't want to fight him. Triple G would be in the middle of the spoke, and whoever agrees to fight, we'll put them on. And then the next one, whoever agrees to fight, we'll put them on. And Triple G just blew up as people didn't care who he fought. It was like a going back to the Tyson days. I was still am a huge Tyson fan. First round knockout, second round knockout, third round knockout. People didn't care. They just wanted to see Mike Tyson go in the ring, with his trademark, the towel over him, and like the gladiators walking into the arena. And Triple G had a lot of early knockouts, like Rubio, sold out arena. Second round knockout, nobody complained. Nobody afterwards said, I want my money back. It was because it was such an entertaining fight, entertaining evening. And we always put on great undercards. We had Chocolatito on a lot of his co-featured fights, and Chocolatito had a lot of fans. That's how the whole Superfly, that's a whole nother discussion. That's how the Superfly series got launched at HBO, because Chocolatito was the co-feature. And at the time, Chocolatito and Triple G were considered the two best pound-for-pound fighters. I think it's the only time that's ever happened in boxing where you have the two top fighters, and you could interchange them. Some people thought Chocolatito had the better resume. Other people thought Triple G had the better resume. Whatever it was, they were the two top guys. And Chocolatito gained a lot of fans and a lot of recognition because he had always been such a great fighter, but until he got on the HBO platform and the publicity of being on the big Triple G shows, then it's like everyone's like in America's like, oh, Chocolatito's the best. It's great. And so we spun off that popularity into what we call the Superfly series. And so the great thing about the small guys like Chocolatito, like Carlos Cuadras, like Estrada, like Rungvisai, all those guys, Inoue, we had Inoue, his first fight in the U.S. was on our show. Inoue, who now is considered one of the top pound-for-pound fighters. Kazuto Ioka, who's one of the top pound-for-pound fighters, he was on our show. We had so many guys, and the great thing about the small guys is they weren't used to earning a lot of money. They were fighting in Mexico, they're fighting in Japan, but for pretty limited money compared to naturally heavyweights or middleweights, whatever it was, welterweights. So when HBO said, okay, we'll get behind this, Chocolatito, deserves to headline a show, and then we put on. He was in a championship fight. Then we had another championship fight. Then we had another great matchup. We had like 3 top HBO televised fights, and the fans loved it because not only did we put on the top fighters in the division, that it was always action-packed fights. The small guys, they realized they have to make an impression for the fans, and they were fighting with everything they had, and the fans loved it. And the good thing about that is then we could interchange. Okay, this guy lost, but now he can fight the other guy. And it was a fun. We did 3 Superfly series, and that was, a testament also to working with different promoters because Chocolatito was with Mr. Honda in Japan, Estrada was with Zamfir down in Mexico. I mean, we just put together all these fights. Well, I just put together the best fighters. A lot of promoters, for whatever reason, have this mentality about, okay, the fighters have to be signed with us, otherwise we're not going to put them on, whatever TV deal it is. And my philosophy was, I just want to put on the best fights for the fans. I don't want to sign them to like a 5-option deal. If you fight on our show, you got to sign for 5 options or So I've actually had one one promoter ask for 6 options, if you can imagine that, for a mandatory challenger to that champion, and that was bizarre. I never understood that one, but that's how we put on those successful Superfly shows, and the guys loved it because they were getting paid, they were getting the recognition on HBO. The fans loved it because they were seeing these great fights, and it worked out. It worked out great, as far as just putting guys on the best matchups from different promoters, and it worked out well.
Do you still do that now with different promoters, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. I mean, with Triple G, I was desperate for anyone in the top 10 to fight him. So it didn't matter which promoter. Like, some guys were like, I'm not going to work with this person. I don't like this person. It's like, I didn't have that luxury. It was like, literally need to try to find the best guy that he can find. He had some mandatories sprinkled in there where you can make the argument they weren't the most competitive guys. But if you have a mandatory, now it's not your choice anymore if you want to keep the title. And he worked so hard to keep those titles, or to unify those titles, that he had to make mandatory defenses that were ordered by the sanctioning bodies. So I still have that philosophy now. Now we have the deal when HBO went out of business, and I worked so hard to have a good relationship with HBO, because in the beginning it was always like, oh, HBO is a pinnacle, and how do we get our guys on HBO? With the Klitschko's it was good. With the Ali connection, it was good because HBO loved Muhammad, so we would kind of have Muhammad do some things with HBO, and that allowed to open the doors for some of our guys to get on HBO and that type of thing. But when HBO went out of business, or not out of business, out of the boxing business, it was like I was kind of like stuck with there's no TV deal, and all my eggs were like in the HBO basket, because that was like the best platform to develop stars at the time. And I really kind of struggled for like a couple of years, because a promoter without a TV deal is like, it's not easy. I started in 2017. I started the Hollywood Fight Night series, to develop new talent, new stars to then get onto the HBO platform. Nice. And so when HBO stopped,
when did HBO go out?
We actually did. We have the record also of doing the last HBO fight, Cecilia Brækhus, who shattered the glass ceiling at HBO. 45-year history of HBO. They didn't put on one female fight. When Triple G was supposed to fight the rematch with Canelo in 2018, Cecilia was going to be on that pay-per-view show. That was going to be a pay-per-view show. Chocolatito was going to be on the show, so she was going to be on HBO pay-per-view, but there had never been a female fighter on HBO itself. Because on pay-per-view, the promoter has the luxury or the ability to kind of choose. Usually there's like 4 fights on pay-per-view, and you can kind of pick which ones make the most sense for the show. And so Cecilia was going to be one of those, and because she was undisputed champion and held the Guinness Book of World Records for the longest reigning undisputed champion and the most title defenses, all those historic things. So when Canelo got suspended by the Nevada Commission, and Bob Bennett wouldn't approve Jaime Munguia, who's fighting Canelo now this Saturday coming up, or I should say who's fighting Canelo now. He, for whatever reason, Munguia was 28-0 with 25 knockouts, physically bigger than Triple G, fought at a lower weight class at 154, but you could tell he was physically bigger, big puncher. Bob Bennett, for whatever reason, said, nope, we can't approve that fight. And if you don't approve a fight, that means it's like medically dangerous. Like, if that guy's going to get in the ring, just because the guy's a favorite doesn't mean you can't approve the fight. If that were the case, 90% of the fights wouldn't get approved. But for a commission or a commissioner to say we can't approve it, that means it's medically going to be too dangerous for Triple G to get into the ring with a guy. And remember, at that time, Triple G was already 36 years old, going on 37. And Bob Bennett said, no, we can't approve it. And that killed that whole thing out there in Las Vegas. And so it went from, that was still going to be an HBO pay-per-view fight. It was going to move from T-Mobile to MGM Grand, and MGM loved it because it was Triple G versus Munguia, an undefeated Mexican, on Cinco de Mayo. Chocolatito was going to be on the show. Cecilia Brækhus was going to be on the show. They loved it. Bob Bennett killed that, and it was it was like literally like 2 weeks before, so we couldn't scramble for another opponent. HBO pay-per-view, in order to properly promote the pay-per-view, we were like literally up against the deadline. We had like 1 day, and we had the artwork already made, everything was made, and everyone loved it except for, like I said, Bob Ben. I can't even say the Nevada Commission, because I'm pretty sure he made that decision on his own. And I was arguing with him. I was giving him all the things, like he's training, he's ready, and what does Munguia wind up doing? Winning a world title in the next fight. I'm like, that was the most bizarre thing that I've seen. And I talked to other commissioners for reputable commissions, and they said they would have approved it without hesitation, especially under the circumstances of Canelo being suspended. We only had like 3 weeks to look for an opponent that was ready to fight, and somehow he killed it. So then it wound up Triple G fighting back at StubHub. But the point of that story was, and that was against Vanes Martirosyan, but the point of that story was Cecilia Brækhus then went from fighting on HBO pay-per-view to then it became a regular HBO event, and she was a co-feature to Triple G. So we broke that glass ceiling, having Cecilia Brækhus as a co-feature on HBO. Never before had there been a female fighter, a female champion featured on HBO, and it went all the way back, going back to the Ali days. Went back to when Vladimir Klitschko fought at Madison Square Garden. I think it was against Calvin Brock. Layla Ali was on the show, and Muhammad was there to support his daughter. He wasn't there to see Vladimir fight, even though he appreciated Vladimir as a heavyweight champion. He was there to see Layla fight. But HBO, sure enough, they refused to show even a highlight of Layla. I said, well, just show if she gets a knockout, just show the highlight there, and they wouldn't do it. But they wanted to do an interview with Muhammad. I said, well, if you're not going to show his daughter, I don't think he's going to want to do an interview with you. And so it got a little bit contentious with HBO at that point. But the whole point of that story was we broke the glass ceiling, and then Cecilia actually wound up getting the last date on HBO, and that would have been the end of 2018. To answer your question, that was a long answer to that question.
But I love that.
And so then she headlined her own HBO show.
Unreal.
Yep.
I love that, especially women doing good things.
Yeah, I'm kind of that niche promoter, I would say, that heavyweight champions from Ukraine, middleweight champion from Kazakhstan, Chocolatito, super flyweights that never really got the credit they deserved over here. Then again with the female boxing, so I like taking on those type of projects. And now working with Callum Walsh on UFC Fight Pass. Callum Walsh has a lot of Irish fans. I know why Dana loves Conor McGregor, because those Irish fans, they love combat sports, they love boxing, they love UFC naturally. And when Dana met Callum, when we flew up there to meet with Dana, and that's how I got the Fight Pass dates, is he loved Callum. I saw in his eyes, he's like, this could be the Conor McGregor of boxing, And so he gave us a shot on UFC Fight Pass. We got 4 dates, and then we got the high. We were doing very well with promoting the shows, and now we've gone on to having the highest rated boxing show. In fact, when Callum just fought St. Patrick's Day at Madison Square Garden, it's the highest rated boxing show ever on the history of UFC Fight Pass, and they do 200 events a year. It's the biggest combat sports platform with the most events, the worldwide reach of the UFC platform. They do everything: grappling, jiu-jitsu, naturally a lot of mixed martial arts events, kind of like a feeder league for whoever does well in their, like the A1 combat, the LFA combat. That's like a feeder system to then signing a contract with the UFC, which is like getting the major leagues of baseball. And boxing was always kind of like as an afterthought there. They always would consistently get the lowest ratings out of the 200 events. And then with Callum Walsh, we got the highest rated event for St. Patrick's Day, highest rated a boxing event ever on UFC Fight Pass, and that was that proved to Dana everything that I said I'd be able to do, give us an opportunity. And naturally with Dana's support, he's got a huge reach, a huge fan base, and then the UFC platforms internationally, a huge reach. And when we do the cross promotion between the UFC platforms, the boxing, which is my background, the boxing platforms, you got an exciting fighter like Callum Walsh, trained by Freddie Roach from Wildcard Gym, Hall of Fame trainer Freddie Roach, who actually has a history with Dana White. Dana actually trained at Freddie's father's gym in Boston before he came to Las Vegas. So there's a long history that goes back with Freddie. So again, that's another kind of tripod where Freddie does the training. Dana, supports from the UFC side and the broadcast side, and then I do the promotion side. But Callum's the one in the ring. Callum has to continue to win impressively, and put on exciting fights. But the door is wide open for him. He's only 23. He's got 10 fights. Like I said, he's headlined Madison Square Garden twice already with only 10 fights. So that's a huge responsibility for him. He's fighting for Ireland, fighting for his people, and he's the sky's the limit for that guy. He's got a great charisma, great social media. Exciting style.
Disciplined athletes you have.
Great heart. Southpaw, big southpaw, super welterweight, big guy, gets a lot of leverage on his punches, great amateur career, European gold medalist. So it's really up for grabs for Callum, and good looking guy, really, really charismatic. That's another one where I want to kind of follow in Triple G's footsteps, where there's a long history of Irish and Mexican people getting along, because the Irish actually supported the Mexican army when they were fighting for their independence. So there's a lot of Irish bars down in Mexico City.
How crazy.
And so that's going to be a very seamless promotion, bringing Callum down there to Mexico and promoting him. He's already the WBC Cotton Americas champion. He's rated number 12 in the world with the WBC. I think number 13 with the IBF. And like I said, the sky's the limit for him, because I was talking to a prominent boxing writer about Callum, and saying, this is great, the platform that he's got on UFC Fight Pass and the support he's getting from the UFC platforms and from Dana. And he's like, and I was kind of comparing it to early Triple G, and he's like, yeah, but Triple G was fighting on HBO, and HBO totally was the best platform to build stars. They launched Floyd Mayweather, Oscar De La Hoya, all these, all the legends that they had launched at the time. And what I said, look, with the UFC platform, everything is social media now. They have over 30, it might be more, but they have over 37 million followers on Instagram on the UFC account. Dana White on his personal account has almost 10 million followers. So when you put that, I'm not putting HBO down at all, because they, like I said, I was a big believer in HBO with the, you could see what happened with Triple G, with the Superfly series, everything. But
adapt with the times.
With the social media that the UFC brings and the attention and the cross-marketing, you can argue that the UFC fan base is bigger now than the boxing fan base, and much younger demographic. That's what the sponsors love. That's what Dana is a genius, the way he's marketed the UFC with their sponsors, with the demographics, everything. I mean, it's a very family-oriented thing when they do the UFC fan experience. You see a lot of kids there. And, for us to tap into that fan base on the boxing side, it's funny because Callum, it's funny, when we take him to a UFC event, he was at UFC 300. I don't know if you saw that video with him and Mark Zuckerberg and Mark's wife putting the Vaseline on, as the cut man was kind of showing her. That video went viral, but he's been promoted so well across the UFC platforms, and the support of Dana, sponsored by Hollerhead Whiskey. When we take him to the UFC events, they're always like, "Oh, there's that boxing fella."
Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, everywhere I go. And when I saw you guys, remember I saw you in Vegas at the fights?
Yeah.
Was that the first time you guys met? You were introducing Callum to Dana?
I brought him up to the UFC offices to meet with Dana personally.
Got it.
So that was already, by the time he was going to the UFC events, that was after that. But Dana has definitely supported him, and when he walks in, like I said, that's so.
Everyone knows.
It's that boxing fella.
You guys have done such a great job. It's unbelievable. And he's such a good guy. Thank you. He's such a good guy. But I'm telling you, the way you guys have promoted him, and he's everywhere. And I love seeing it, because I know you guys are doing it. And I'm teaching some of my employees too that it's all about that hype behind them.
Yep.
And out here, everything's a show. It's Hollywood.
Yeah.
But if you actually have a good product and you have quality people,
Yep.
then sky's the limit with what you can do with that. So,
Freddie's a big believer in Callum. It was very similar to what Abel was saying. Is that this guy can really fight, and he's fighting. His next fight is June 7th. I got to make sure all the fans tune in to UFC Fight Pass. It's going to be at the beautiful Chumash Casino up in Santa Ynez. If you want to go up there for wine tasting, it's a great area up there. Lake Kachuma is up there. It's beautiful up there, right by Solvang, up that area. And June 7th, Chumash Casino. It's on Friday. So people got to leave early with that Friday traffic, rush hour traffic, getting through Santa Barbara. But if you go up there early, you won't regret it. It's like I said, it's a beautiful area up there. That's where the film Sideways was filmed up there, Santa Ynez, and that'll be Callum's next fight. And there'll be some celebrity guests. I mean, when you think of Hollywood Fight Nights, we've had big celebrities in the past. Halle Berry has come to our shows. Mario Lopez has come to our shows. Dana has come to a number of the shows. So you never know who's going to pop up there, and that's just an extra added kind of experience for the fans that go up there live.
Besides everything else they're going to get.
Besides all the knockouts and the competitive fights, and that's been our philosophy. I got to give Mike a lot of credit. Mike Styles always ingrained in everyone. You need to put on exciting fights, and I agree with him 100%. If you're going to get a UFC fan to watch boxing, which there's always been UFC fans versus boxing fans, but if you can get a UFC fan base to watch boxing, they want to see exciting fights. They don't want to see a boring 10-round, 12-round decision. Oh, I won on points. Great. The UFC fans don't want to see that.
Right.
They want to see action. They want to see knockouts. They want to see guys going at it, and that's what we put on is exciting fights, and that was our promise to Dana. And like I said, with the ratings show that it's definitely working with them, with their support, with our boxing background and knowledge. We're really kind of building a lot of momentum for boxing on UFC Fight Pass.
As far as what we've seen recently with some of the boxers that just are going a little crazy with trying to advertise their fights, I think it goes against the character of the sport. And just how do you feel, or do you have any feelings towards any of that? And I feel like you're not one that wants to go that way, and that you can do it strategically, beyond just garbage hype. It's more you introduce people and you create relationships.
Yeah, we do it different. I don't hold that against anyone. I mean, if they're bringing eyeballs to their career, I don't hold that against them. If that's what markets their career, I think whether it's a Jake Paul, he's earning his tickets.
Yeah.
He sells his own tickets. He sells his own pay-per-views. It's not like he's getting guarantees, whatever. So, whatever that brings to the sport. Whether it's a spectacle or whatever, now if someone's getting a huge guarantee and they lose money, there's been boxers where they insist on a guarantee. Okay, I need this much money to get in the ring. They get the guarantee, but then the promoter loses money because then the ticket sales aren't there, the pay-per-views aren't there, and that's the opposite. If someone's really generating their own hype and pay-per-views and revenue, and then they get paid a percentage of whatever they generate, more power to them. Our philosophy is, we'll go out and we sell out the Commerce Casino. We sell out Chumash, Madison Square Garden. We did the top. Oh, this is a good. This will interest you. That for Callum Walsh's only his second fight at the theater, headlining the theater, we were in the top 20 all-time ticketing gates in the history of MSG Theater. So that's a big statement, and that goes along. Got to give him credit for the Irish fan base. We put on Rashad Mahdi. We put on Cletus Selden. A lot of local guys that sold a lot of tickets that. We're fan favorites, and it really worked. The whole combination worked, and that goes back to your question about kind of doing that Superfly thing. Still, it was Callum Walsh was the only fighter that was signed to our promotional company. Everyone else on that show made sense for that show being local in New York, and it really worked.
I love that you do that because I feel like there's enough to go around. You don't have to isolate, and we're better together. The relationships are greater when you have more people.
Absolutely.
As long as you all lead with integrity, it's a win-win situation, So I'm glad that you do that, and I appreciate that and everything that you do with the fighters. Man, I just want to keep asking you questions. I'm like, this has been amazing. I love stuff like this, just your skill and what you've been involved in and what you've experienced. One thing I have a couple questions that I ask everyone that I'm going to ask you, but for myself, I'd like to know how do you get along with, or how does everyone get along together? Because there's so many, cooks in the kitchen with the nutrition people, the promoters, just the team. There's so many different aspects, strength and conditioning versus boxing. And, there's a lot of egos and a lot of people involved in that. And so how do you navigate that?
It really takes a strong team. You see the boxer in the ring is the final product, but it takes a strong team, whether it's the nutritional side, the strength and conditioning, Freddie does the boxing side. It takes a strong team. And if there's a couple legs missing in that team, you're going to see it in the finished product. So it's not easy. There's a lot of egos in that, and a lot of times it's dangerous because sometimes the support people, all of a sudden think they know more than the trainer knows, and so sometimes it can be challenging. So that's not an easy balancing act either, but it's an important part of it because if you really have a good chemistry, and Freddie runs a very tight program there at Wildcard Boxing, and the people that he's got there, the people that he can trust and rely on. And if he has to take a trip, like this week, I'm sure he's in Las Vegas with Jaime Munguia all week. So he's got people that are running his gym and taking over some of the training duties. And you got to have faith in your people, just like I have to have faith in the people behind us. I have to give a shout out to Charles Boziger also, who's our matchmaker, who puts on these great fights that Dana always raves about. So you got to rely on your team, just like the team I have on the promotional side. You got to rely on that on the training side, and it all comes down to the chemistry.
Love that. I can't believe we know each other now. We'll do a part 2. And you have to see a little bit of what I do too, because we've always talked about it.
Absolutely.
You've never come experience.
No, I'm looking forward to that.
Definitely. So it's a lot of fun for me. Fixing extreme injuries, but then also training people to become elite to where they don't get injured anymore.
Well, that's a big part, and I think some people underestimate it, is the recovery. Mm-hmm. If you're doing a really hard training session or sparring session, whatever, and then the next day you're like, oh, I'm worn out from the day before. But if you can recover properly, whether it's nutrition, whether it's the recovery process on the on the training side, that not only lengthens a professional athlete's career, but allows them to recover a lot faster if it's done the right way with the right techniques.
Most people don't know that, and so it's interesting. But it's also, I look at the wear and tear. They're doing the same movements over and over. And with a boxing career, just so people know, they're sparring.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like you just like dance around a little bit and then you get thrown in at the end. You're sparring people on a regular basis. So you're in the trenches with another guy just going, giving it your all. So
a lot of wear and tear on your body.
Definitely. With
the Klitschko's, Vladimir, big guy, 6'5", 250 pounds. At one point it was like it didn't make sense for him to run because it put a lot of pressure, a lot of weight on his knees, his hips, and everything. So he did his cardio with swimming. Instead of running, he did swimming. So he just kind of adapted, and there was no pounding on his joints. Yes. He would still get the cardio. In fact, I think arguably swimming is one of the best cardio for boxers because his shoulders, upper body, lower body, whatever it is, and it doesn't wear out your body as much as theoretically as running if it's not
running is
properly.
About 6 times your body weight through your joints, so it doesn't create an inflammatory process. Plus, you're working against forces in every single range of motion, so you're preventing injury. You're gonna be looser because you can control more range and more degrees of freedom. So that's amazing. Especially
for the heavyweight. That's your science side. You know a lot more about that than I do. I just know the generalizations. But
I've also, with my pro boxers, I work with a lot of pro boxers, and what I find are the same injuries. So then instead of waiting for them to get injured, I can look at their mechanics when they're moving, and I'm like, okay, they're heading there. Because if you're always throwing a punch, when are you ever doing the opposite movement? Right. And so you create these imbalances.
Right?
Yes.
You have to be proactive.
Exactly. Then the recovery process, like you said, is even better because you're working as a system, not just strong puncher. Yeah. But you get a lot of ego in that too with the stubborn guys, so it's fun. Yeah. But you work around that, and you find these guys that they have the heart and they want to do whatever they can to get whatever competitive edge they can, and those are the guys I like to work with. The ones that want to be above and beyond. So it's fun, a lot of fun. Well, I appreciate you being here so much. There's 2 questions I ask everyone.
Okay.
You're like, here we go. No, it's nothing crazy. It's just because of your lifestyle, you're traveling everywhere. I just ask people if they could pick one modality, and you know a lot more about recovery than I realize, and just the strength and conditioning world and just how the body performs and how the systems intertwine. But if you could pick one modality that helps you stay healthy in your crazy lifestyle, what would it be? Being from a European background, I like the saunas. I just like, I
try to stay fit with cardio and with going to the gym, even incorporated some boxing workouts, which I think that's a great workout, even if you're not a professional boxer.
I love boxing.
Boxing, I can highly recommend a boxing workout. But that's kind of part of my regular routine is being in the sauna, and that always seemed my body seems to react pretty well to that.
That's the greatest.
That's my modality.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I remember telling you about infrared, but what do you like normally? Do you like the steam sauna or do you like the infrared sauna?
I don't have a big choice there, so the place where I go to, the gym I go to, has a regular sauna there. But the Klitschko training camp, if you ever get a chance, we talked about Greece a little bit, but if you ever get a chance to go to Austria, to near Kitzbühel, about an hour outside of Munich, hour and a half outside of Munich, it's a place called Stangelwert Hotel, one of the best hotels in Europe, probably one of the best hotels in the world, 5-star hotel, has a boxing ring, and we always had the Klitschko training camps up there. So we had literally like 10 sparring partners up there, great food. It's up in the Austrian Alps, so you got a little bit of altitude, not altitude like Big Bear, but you got altitude up there, so it's great for training, fresh air. You got the seasons up there, and they have everything. They have they have steam rooms, saunas, Finnish saunas, whatever type of sauna you want. They have the natural spring where they have the snow runoff there. That's kind of like their cold plunge up there, and the sparring partners, living there in a 5-star hotel, they didn't want to go home.
Right.
We literally, this is an interesting aspect to the Klitschko story. We literally had like every current world-class boxer up there with the Klitschko training camp. Deontay Wilder was up there as a sparring partner. Tyson Fury was up there, not as a sparring partner, but he was there with Emmanuel Stewart, and he wanted to show Fury kind of like how a professional or a world championship training camp was run. So Fury was up there, and then every one of Usyk was up there. Any one of the top 10 that you can think of was up there. Joseph Parker was up there. I'm forgetting all the names now, but we had, like I said, when you have 10 at a time, you had so many fights. It was like the who's who of heavyweight boxing, and they always wanted the best sparring partners. So they had the budget to bring the guys up there and spar, but they brought in the world-class sparring, and it was great for them.
And just so people know, that's one of the most important parts of boxing and training, because I've seen teams where they pick these partners that are just mediocre and they're not challenging the fighter, them, yeah. And I've seen teams where they when they're sparring during camp, they're trying to find guys that could hurt the person, not physically hurt them to where they're going to take them out, but at least challenge them to where they're going to wake up and do what they need to do to train and prepare for the fight.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
And when you get to the really high level, it's like some people it's like, oh, he didn't look good in sparring, whatever. Like Vitaly didn't really care how he looked in sparring. He was working with his coach Fritz Tunek. He was working with just on specific things in sparring. So you might not have looked the best in sparring, but when it came to a fight, he was great. He was like one of the greatest heavyweights I've seen in the ring. Just the heart and what he was able to accomplish, and like same thing with Triple G. It's like he was literally working. He could hit someone so hard that he was just like really kind of working with them. But then some guys got brave in there. It's like, oh, okay, I'm feeling comfortable. I'm gonna hit him with a hard shot or body shot, whatever. And then I've seen Triple G just touch people and just have them like on the ground. He had a world champion, and that's the other thing is we never release sparring footage. I don't really understand the people that release sparring footage, because that should be like private between, it's like you're a champion, you're bringing another guy to help you prepare for that particular fight. Why would you want to try to
showing your cards? That too, yeah.
Embarrass them as, well, I had him on the ground or I had this or this. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, we always treated the sparring partners. Sparring partners are very, very important. That's really, you hit it on the head. It's really underestimated how important sparring is, because you need to have the right guys. They need to feel comfortable in camp. They need to feel respected in order for them to perform in training, because they're the ones really helping the champion or the main event person to prepare properly for the fight. And so if you disrespect them or if you're trying to hurt them, it makes no sense to hurt a sparring partner, and now you got to send them home, and now you got to look for another one. Triple G always really took good care of them, made them feel comfortable, interacted with them, took them out to dinner a lot of times. Same thing with Vladimir. and Vitaly, they would always invite him for dinner and make him feel part of the team because they were literally an integral part of the training team or the training camp. And so the happier the sparring partners, the better results you would get, as opposed to if someone's like, oh, I don't want to be here, or all of a sudden then they start feeling injured, then they don't want to spar if they don't want to be up there, and if they're only there for the money, because we had to pay them pretty good money, to be up there, especially with the Klitschko's training and with Triple G. Like, people don't want to be in the ring with a big puncher like that.
I can't even imagine.
If you don't treat them properly, then you're not going to get the results that you need in order to prepare properly for the fights.
Right. It's a team effort.
And it just goes back to just being genuine people.
Yes.
Treating people the right way. Some people are like, oh, sparring partner or whatever. And it doesn't make sense. Then they feel disrespected, and or sometimes you see some of these videos, or everyone's like around the ring cheering, and it's like a real fight in there. It's like, what? It's not a fight. You're like practicing to prepare for it, or make it a real fight and put it as a paid fight, not like, who can hurt someone where there's not all the proper procedures in place, for training.
Right. Again, catering to ego versus the true meaning of what it should be about.
I've seen a lot of great gym fighters that when they get in the ring and the lights turn on, that's the other thing. You can have a great amateur or a great gym fighter, and then when the lights turn on, especially Madison Square Garden under the brightest lights in the world, and then they kind of freeze and they don't perform. Triple G always, whenever the stakes got bigger, it's like he raised his game to match that. When he fought at the Garden, it's like, boom, okay, now I want to make an even bigger impression.
Yes.
First time on HBO, boom, I want to make it big. And he would always raise his game. There's other guys that are like, kind of intimidated under the bright lights, and they don't perform as well as they do in a more comfortable environment, like if they're in the gym.
I've heard G say many times, I'm retiring, and he's definitely said it year after year, and he always says, never mind, I'm coming back. Do you think he's going to fight again?
Well, I mean, congratulations to him that he got appointed as the head of the National Olympic Committee in Kazakhstan.
Yes, I just saw that recently.
That's a big responsibility and a big job.
And he deserves
Kazakh amateur sports, or Olympic sports, I should say, is a big deal. When we had the success with Triple G, it's like everyone tells me, oh, I'm going to sign this guy from Kazakhstan, I'm going to sign that. Everyone wanted a fighter from Kazakhstan. I'm like, there's only one Triple G. Just because you're from Kazakhstan doesn't mean you're the next
just come out like that.
Triple G, or you can hit that hard.
Right.
And that was kind of funny. From Kazakhstan, like, nobody knew what to do with a fighter from Kazakhstan, so like every promoter wanted to have a fighter from Kazakhstan. That was kind of bizarre to me. That went like the opposite way of they saw the success we had with Triple G, and like everyone wanted to sign a fighter from Kazakhstan. But he's got that position where it's not just for boxing; it's the Olympic committee for every sport. You got Paris 2024 coming up for the Olympics, so he's very busy. He's back in Kazakhstan now, preparing. Like I said, a lot of responsibility in that, and he takes it seriously. He came up through the Olympic system. Was very successful, Olympic silver medalist, and he only got a silver medal because his coach wanted him to move up a weight above where he normally fought, because the guy below him wasn't as strong. So he moved up, wound up getting a silver medalist to a guy that never turned pro, a silver medal, and then the guy that took his spot as a middleweight wound up winning gold medal for Kazakhstan. So. He was very successful. He's a world champion, very successful in the amateurs, and I think he'll do really well for the sport in Kazakhstan.
He deserves this. He's
Absolutely.
happy too, I can see.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
And he hasn't officially said he's retiring, but with all of his responsibilities, you can't properly train for a fight, let alone sign for a fight if he's doing that. So, he's focused
Nothing
on
for
that.
now.
Nothing for now.
Nothing for now. You never know with G. He'll come out of nowhere and
Never
be like,
know.
I have to do it one more.
You never know. I always thought he was going to do like a homecoming fight, in Kazakhstan.
That'd
he
be
always
amazing.
wanted to do that, but that hasn't happened so far.
Yet.
Yeah.
Imagine all the Olympic stuff and then doing it. That would be, great promotional thing. Last question. If you could tell your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
One piece of advice: don't trust people in boxing.
What have you dealt with that?
I was very trusting in the beginning, and you just learn from wanting to surround yourself with people that are
Have good intentions.
And for whatever reason, the boxing business has a lot of people who don't have good intentions, and regardless in what aspect it is. And so now I'm very, very selective with the people I surround myself with, people who are loyal, people who are working for the betterment of not only our company, what we're trying to do, but for the betterment of the sport, and who are reliable. I have the reputation of, if I say something's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Right.
Whether I make money on it or lose money on it or whatever. There's one other person, is Mr. Honda in Japan, where I have a great relationship with Mr. Honda. Like I said, he promotes Chocolatito, and his word is his bond. He can say something on the telephone, and it's going to happen 100%. And that's the way I pride myself, because some promoters, you sign a contract. I've dealt with promoters. You sign the contract, and then they start negotiating after you sign the contract. You're like, well, we just signed the contract.
Trust me.
And
Hollywood in general, though. I mean, out here is
probably a lot of similarities.
Oh my gosh.
Sports and entertainment.
Yes.
There's probably a lot of similarities where there's a high stakes, high fame, high popularity on both sides, and agents and whatever role they play. So that would be what the advice I would give myself is: don't be as trusting as I, had initially been, because you learn, or I learned my lessons the hard way. Now, if someone burned me one time, they're out of the Rolodex, and it doesn't matter what it is. Don't bother calling me again.
I'm the same way.
I keep whittling it down further and further.
Just protecting your energy, because it's crazy, and
absolutely.
you do it again, and you let someone back in, and they get you again. You're like, damn it, never again.
Say that, what is it? The leopard doesn't change his spots.
Yeah, exactly. But it's fun, though, because I would never change those lessons that I've learned, because they made me so smart, and they've made me study contract law and just, how to word different things. And you're right, as soon as you sign a contract and they're like, oh, so-and-so's taken off for a week. What do you mean? We have a deadline. This is a 3-month contract.
Right.
Like, oh, they had a kid. Really? Because before we signed the contract, I never heard about this damn kid. Like, it's been crazy out here. But I can't even imagine, because I've dealt with boxing, too, where some guys just don't pay their bills. Like, I just learned. I'm like, I collect payment up front. You're not allowed to see me until you pay me up front.
That's a smart system.
Yeah, it's
and unfortunately the trainers go through that. I'm sure you go through that, but the trainers go through that. You see what just happened with Derek James.
I didn't.
Well, Derek James and Errol Spence, they're in some type of legal situation. They're over the pay, and I'm a firm believer of the trainers. When the boxers are fighting for nothing, the trainers are making nothing.
Right.
And if they agree to fight for a percentage, when the boxer is making $500 and they get $50 for a 2-month training camp.
Right. Morning to night, so people know it's nonstop.
How do you equate that to an hourly wage?
Right.
So when a fighter does make $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, why would the percentage all of a sudden stop being paid to a trainer who is willing to basically work for nothing? And that's come up a lot of times. That kind of became an issue with Triple G and Abel. And it just, I believe the people there from the beginning, should benefit as long as it's reasonable, but it should benefit from when the fruits of the success are there.
Definitely. Just like you said, the team effort, and everyone, it's a team effort. You wouldn't be able to be where you are if it wasn't for that team. So you start to overlook that or become entitled within that. You start to lose sight of what's,
Or you start
real.
changing your team around, and then it's like the people there from the beginning, then you start
losing loyalty.
The people that want to be with you once you're a champion.
Yes.
I've seen it, when the fighter's not making anything, when we were basically paying for his fights.
Right.
It's like nobody wanted to be associated with that.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, he's making multi-millions of dollars. He's got a lot more friends that that are experts in boxing.
Yes.
That want to be involved.
Coming out of the woodwork.
And definitely a lot of distractions, and not him in particular, but it whether it's entertainers, an actor who has a great role, and I'm sure they have a lot of friends, and could be football players, basketball, whatever it is. It just seems to be a common theme of people you can trust and keep your circle small, and I think that's the best way to handle those type of situations.
Definitely. And keeping the good people around.
In charge up front.
Yeah, literally. And I keep people's cards on file. I don't play games anymore. Like, I'm a quick learner, you know, and I came out here, I didn't know anyone. And I've been here for 6 years now. I built this. I'm 100% referral.
You've done a great job.
I love it, you know, and I love what I do, and I love being able to help people. But it's you learn quickly because, I'll never not get paid again and have someone be like, what do you...
Once the fight's over.
Oh, yeah, they don't care.
Well.
Yeah. Oh, and then it's like, you're the problem. And I'm like, oh, I'm the problem. So then it's a good time.
Yeah.
You live and learn, but I'll never learn.
Definitely.
Never learn again.
As long as you learn.
Yes. It's a blessing.
That's a blessing.
Everything's a blessing. Depends on how you look at it.
Yeah. And then a lot of times I looked at it as like, oh, okay, this person owed me X amount of dollars. It's like, okay, well, he's not paying me, so for that amount of money, I don't have to. So that was
my dad used to say that. I just paid $4,000 to never talk to you again. Thanks, because you don't deserve to be in my life anyways. So it's like
exactly.
He'd be like that. Just forget it, you know. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. It's not worth your energy. Yeah. So true. That's how I feel about some boxers. Well, I appreciate you so much. I feel like there's hours of information. I can't wait to pick your brain some more because I love this.
Absolutely. Anytime. I'm happy to talk to people like yourself who's an expert in the field and, you know, is involved with the boxing business, and happy to tell my stories.
Love it. And then promote Callum's fight one more time. Just tell people where they can reach you and just anything you want to promote.
June 7th, Chumash Casino, live on UFC Fight Pass. We just signed Carlos Balderas, who was a U.S. Olympian in the 2016 Olympic team. He's from Santa Maria. First time he's fighting, basically in front of his hometown crowd. It's Santa Maria is like 20 minutes from Chumash, so we're really excited about that signing. He'll be the co-feature to Callum Walsh's fight.
Amazing.
Up there. Then we have Omar Trinidad coming back in July. We haven't announced it yet, but July 26th at Commerce Casino. So
he's entertaining.
Excited about Omar. Omar's one of the most fan-friendly, authentic guy. A guy from Boyle Heights. That just goes to show you. Didn't have the biggest amateur career, but real wholesome family. Mm-hmm. Great team that he works with. And you just give him the opportunities, and he just kept beating people and beating people and beating people. We kept putting him in tough matches, and he was beating people and impressively in exciting fights. That's what fans want to see, exciting fights.
Right.
And he was bringing out a ton of fans, and so we're excited about his return to Commerce Casino on July 26th. So
amazing.
those are the two shows we have coming up, and like I said, you never know which celebrity you're going to run into at our shows.
Never a dull moment. And so they could get tickets at UFCFightPass.com?
You can subscribe UFC Fight Pass. You can get an annual subscription. I think is the best value in combat sports. Like I said, they have over 200 events. I believe it's $99 for an annual subscription. Sometimes they have special promotional deals, things like that. But for $99 for all those events and all the boxing events that we're doing now, that's a great deal. Dana's smart with that. Yeah. They wants to have a wide subscriber base that you can publicize the events on, and the tickets for Chumash is chumashcasino.com. That's where you can go to the ticketing site and buy the tickets to the website.
Amazing. Well, thank you for coming. We appreciate you so much.
Great. I look forward to coming back and telling some more stories, some new stories that I've gone through.
Amazing. I love it. Thank you. We want to thank Tom Loeffler. That was such an amazing episode. The stories that man had to tell. I can't believe it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's so refreshing to hear just who he is as a person, and it just validates everything I already believe. Just character and integrity are so crucial to business and relationships and success. And that's what I feel success is. And I truly am inspired by the stories he shared today. So surround yourself with good people, do good in the world, try to better yourself each and every day. Don't take advantage of people. Try to live with integrity because we need more people out there like that. And we appreciate him again for being here. Make sure to tune in June 7th to Callum Walsh's fight with 360 Boxing Promotions. If you like this episode, make sure to like and subscribe. Reach out to us if you have any questions or comments. Thank you again to Tom Loeffler. We'll see you at the fight.